If you use Pastel, I guarantee this video is going to be such a blessing to you. This is something that took me many years to discover, and now that I have, it's actually transformed the way I paint in Pastel. There's two things I'm going to show you today that combined so that you can use them yourself. One is how to transform ordinary papers into pastel paper that has grip or tooth, and the second thing is how to combine gouache and pastel, and the reason why you can use, or it benefits to use, gouache with pastel. So let's get into it. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kayleen West. I live in Victoria, Australia. Always experimenting and working in many mediums. Sit back, enjoy the video. And of course, please like, subscribe and share if you will. Much appreciated. I'm going to demonstrate in a minute, but while I'm talking to you, I just want to show you a few different pastel papers. Now, depending on how you work in pastel, whether you work very fine with pencil or you like to paint in pastel, which is what I prefer, to be more painterly in pastel, will determine what kind of paper that you'll gravitate towards. Most pastelists are very attracted to the sanded papers, whether they be a very smooth or rough sanded paper, because they give you the opportunity to build up layers without slipping around. You know, once the pastel fills the tooth of the paper, which is the surface, once it fills with pastel, it's very difficult to then continue putting layer upon layer. So pastel papers can start with very fine. There's a whole lot of different pastel papers, very fine or slightly textured papers. They're often a thin paper rather than a thicker card-like substrate, and they will only hold a very limited amount of pastel, although they allow for very fine illustrated work. They are not as popular as the sanded papers. So you've got several brands of sanded papers, and if you hear that sound, that's the textured surface, the sanded glass-like surface that grips the pastel and allows you to build up layers. Then you've got sketchbook paper that is very smooth. You can see that almost has a shine to it. Comes in different colours. This is hardly ever used for pastel. It can be used for pastel, but it's incredibly difficult to work on a smoother surface. There's just nothing for the pastel to grip. But today I'm going to show you how you can use even cheap sketchbooks like this, and this was cheap. It was only a few dollars to buy. And it's this paper that I'm going to demonstrate on to show you how to turn this paper into pastel paper. So a couple of weeks ago I was invited by the Pastel Society of Victoria to do a demonstration for them, and I thought, what can I demonstrate that they haven't already seen and that will be new and enlightening? And I thought, why not share my own recent discovery with gouache and resurfacing paper. And so I did use a slightly different paper to what I'm demonstrating here for you today. I used a very smooth pastel paper. A pastel paper that I usually don't like to work on because it has a strange texture, and I just don't like the finish of it. So I used that to demonstrate, because I knew a lot of artists don't like that paper in particular, and I won't name it, but it was I knew that they would have stores of it somewhere being unused, and it was a great way to recycle those papers in the back of the cupboard. But today we're using an even more difficult paper, and this sketchbook paper, like I said, is quite smooth. So that's what we're using today. Now, gouache is an interesting medium, and again, it's something that I used many years ago back in my college days and kind of didn't touch it for decades, and then picked it up one day and decided to give it a good workout and do several studies and see what the medium did. And I found that I actually fell in love with it. Being primarily a oil painter, I loved the way that gouache would behave, very similar to oils. It was buttery when used thick and not too much water, and it would reactivate when you added water. So unlike acrylics or watercolor, once they're laid down and they dried, that's kind of it. But with gouache, it can be reactivated and you can still move the paint around to a degree, do a bit of blending or soften edges. There's a lot of things that you can do with gouache that you can't with the other water-based mediums. And it dries to a very matte finish, not a glossy finish like acrylic. So it has a unique look that was very popular in the early 1800s and onward for illustration. And one of the advantages of gouache was that it would, because it dried matte, it was much easier to scan or photograph for publication. So it had that advantage. Now, I won't go into all the intricacies of gouache. I just wanted to introduce it to you and explain to you how it behaves, because here I am demonstrating, but you can't feel the paint like I can. And so I just want to give you an audible way of you feeling what I'm painting. And so as I paint, I'm building up the paint layers. Now with gouache, you don't build it up too thick. You don't go very globby or the paint can crack. But you can still have a nice buttery painting experience with it. And that's what I'm doing here. Some people get very frustrated with gouache because they tend to try and use it like watercolor. And when you have a lot of water being used, and you can see I'm hardly touching the water with this, when you're using a lot of water, of course it's going to reactivate, and then you're going to have colours blending into other colours where you may not want them to blend. So if you've had a go at gouache and found that to be frustrating, have another go and use it as neat as you can with just creamy paint, and see what you think. Now as this paint dries, because it goes matte and rather porous, it does create a surface on its own that is appealing to paint over with pastel. The surface itself, once you cover all of that paper with enough paint, is textured just enough to use pastels over the top. But to create even more texture, we're going to take another step. Now, this was the same scene as one of the ones that I did for the Pastel Society, so I will show you just a slightly different version of this one here and the underpainting, so that you can see what was done on that other paper. And there will be images of the paper once that I've given it this next treatment. But I do want to say that the product that I'm about to show you is not sponsored. I use it for myself, and I've discovered that I enjoy it, but I have no affiliations with them or anything. I'm just really enjoying using this product in this application. So they're the images that were done for the Art Society, and I got someone on the night to time me for 5 minutes, so I wouldn't spend any more than 5 minutes on each one. the medium that we're going to use is this clear gesso by Liquitex, and I'll explain a little bit about this so you can have a very clear view of the limitations of it and the benefits of it. Now inside this clear gesso, and gesso is usually white, this dries clear but not quite clear. So it has like a pumice in it. There's some kind of grit in it that when you apply it to the surfaces, it glues down this gritty surface, much like pastel primers do. And so the advantage of this is the fact that it's clear, because you could do a drawing, you know, sketch something up first and, you know, really go to town on that, and then use this clear gesso over it to seal it in and create a grip ready for pastel. So it works the same with going over other mediums.
So this is the demo, one of the demo pieces, and it has the gesso over top of it. Now when you place it over top of gouache, you've got to consider the fact that gouache reactivates with water, and you're putting a wet medium over it. So you need to work really fast. Get that on, cover it, so be quite thick with it, not too thick, but be quite thick with it, cover it, and then don't move it around and let it dry. And you can use a hairdryer if you wish. Now this is a very old, and I'm talking decades old, painting that I did in acrylic on watercolour paper, and I used it over that to reuse the paper and take advantage of the colour underneath. But acrylic's easy to go over, it won't shift, and you've got plenty of play time. But if you need extra layers of the medium, just wait till the first layer's dry, and then you can really play over the top of it with the gesso. It won't matter. But it does leave a milky surface, and you can see the brush strokes. Now if I show you this on the sketchbook, you can see the glittery, the little specks there. That's the pumice or the glass. I don't know what's in it, the ingredients that are in it, but that is the grit we're talking about, and that is the sound of the grit on a smooth surface. So it's a combination of the gouache and the gesso there, but it's more the gesso now that's creating the tooth of the paper.
Now this is a close-up of the primer, the gesso, the clear gesso primer on top of the black paper, and you'll see it's got, you can kind of see the grains sitting on top of that paper. That gives you an idea of the texture that's left behind, and this is only one coat. You can increase the coats to as many as you like and build up that texture more and more.
Now this is the demonstration piece done for the Art Society on one of those studies, over top of one of those studies. So this is the pastel paper with a coat of gesso over it, and you can see there's a lot of pastel on here, and so there's almost as much as you would use on a sanded paper. These are the colours that I use. I didn't use a lot of colours.
So I hope that helps you use up your papers and get some more pastel work done without paying $10 and $20 for a sheet of pastel paper. So check out your drawers and see what you've got that you can turn into pastel paper, either with gouache or with clear gesso. And if you enjoyed that video, it was helpful, let your friends know, like and subscribe. You know the drill, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.